A big thanks to all our sponsors: Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, website skipsandbins.com, easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website mrvickies.co.uk or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174 or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you could take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel. You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 0844 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9. And you can catch us on the Red, the Toon and the Cat and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again, but it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words that make...
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith. It is the three amigos, the perfect way to kickstart your NUFC weekend. And you know when you press the wrong button at work and the adverts come on when they should come on halfway through the show? Well, I've just done that, haven't I? Yeah, it's a lot less calamitous than if Joe Biden pressed the wrong button. But it just means I might have to play the ads later on again. But anyway, welcome to Steve, to George, and to Mitch. As always, plenty to talk about, plenty to get through on the show on this horrendous night across the UK where Storm Babette is taking full effect. And stay safe out there wherever you are in the UK. If you are getting hit by this bad weather, best policy I think tonight is stay indoors, batten down the hatches, and stick to us. Watch us for the next 2 hours and have a drink and start thinking about what we're going to do tomorrow against Crystal Palace. The press conference, I did manage to review it. Did get the press review up there, and from my perspective, it was very much as I expected it to be. a lot of sympathy for Tonali coming from Eddie Howe after the week or 2 weeks that he's been through. Some fairly curt, short answers to some of the press who were there. Surprising to see Louise Taylor there when there's a whiff of controversy. And ultimately, I just thought, again, brilliantly handled by the gaffer. Somebody who can read the room, somebody who is very good at answering questions or not answering questions, and somebody who certainly has the club interests at heart, the best interests at heart, and also has players' best interests at heart when you listen to what he actually had to say today. And as I say, on the press conference review on the channel, I'll go through a full rundown of what Eddie had to say. Very supportive, George. Came out very supportive of his player. And yeah, I thought he handled that really well today, Eddie.
Yeah, I mean, it's what I would expect from him. He's been great from the start. I suspect that while he was away, he had some training, because his media presence is really, really strong and gets better as it goes on. Discussed it the other night. Tonali's in trouble. He's accepted he's in trouble, and that's the big start for any addiction. Because before that, it would be a horrible secret world that he was carrying on his shoulders, and eventually it's all come tumbling down. And he'll need support, otherwise it can only get worse if he doesn't get the right support. The big one for Newcastle is how do they keep him occupied while he's frozen away from his colleagues in training. I'm sure that they'll devise all sorts of things, and people like Trippier and others with a bit of grey matter between their ears will be devising ways to support him. Eddie Howe, it was masterful. What I like about him is even the questions that he didn't want to answer, he wasn't going to answer, he knew how to get rid of them fairly quickly without there being any comeback. And that takes some learning, that takes some doing. So yes, he's rapidly becoming a top performer. Has been before, but he's demonstrating it now. And Tonali couldn't be in a better place in terms of wanting help with a manager like that, and colleagues on the pitch who probably going to support him as well. And I suspect that should he walk onto that field tomorrow sometime, he'll feel the support of the Geordie nation as well. Because that's there are lots of people saying, well, he shouldn't play again, he shouldn't do this. That's people who really don't understand things like addictions. And 30 years as a magistrate, I've been very close to it and seen what it does to people and what it does to families and what it does to all sorts of things. The last thing he needs is that kind of condemnation. What he needs is support and treatment and advice, and he's going to get a lot of that. So, and as I say, if he walks on that field tomorrow, he'll certainly get my plaudits, I can tell you, because it's a horrible place to be. He'll feel terribly alone at the moment, and he needs to be shaken out of that. And one way of doing it is for him to get a good pat on the back from everybody concerned, his manager, his colleagues, and the supporters. And I'll be there cheering tomorrow.
Great stuff. Yep, Steve. It's been a tough couple of weeks for Tonali, but there's certainly love and care and emotion. They said we're threw our arms around him, and we wanted to support our player. Lots of talk about pastoral care and lots of talk about getting him through this. Also, just a reminder, I guess, that that from his perspective as a manager, he can only help Tonali while he's at the club for the few hours that he's there a day. And ultimately, he needs to help himself as well. They can't be with them 24/7 is what Eddie basically said about not just Tonali, but footballers in general. You can't babysit players. They have to have their own responsibilities. So, the family will play a huge part in this. And lots of other questions, quite rightly battered down by Eddie Howe, daft questions as well. Because like I discussed on Wednesday and I discussed with Superman and Gibbo yesterday, we don't know the full ins and outs. We still don't know exactly what it is. Lots of rumours, lots of speculation. The club now clearly know, because one of the questions today was, do the club know exactly what's happened? Yes, they do. He said he didn't know. I'm sure he does. But at the end of the day, it's now time for him to face his punishment and to get on with his life and to recover from this situation that he's found himself in. And ultimately, I thought today was every bit as good as I thought it would be, and a bit better.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. It's an interesting. I mean, there's a few things that you mentioned there. Obviously, the club with its care towards one of their assets, one of their players, a human being as well, by the way. We call him an asset, but he's a human being. He's a young lad. He's got himself into some trouble, and he needs support. And it's not the sort of trouble that affects him when an off the field incident or anything like that. It's very much like you say, an addiction that needs to be handled with care, needs to be handled with kid gloves. It's not involving the law or anything like that, which means it becomes. I find it really interesting when a manager like Eddie, for example, comes out and says, "Well, I don't see much of the player, or I've had a quiet word with him, or I know he's been in training for a couple of days." And I think to myself, if I was the manager of that particular company, and I had an employee who was having problems, I would be constantly wrapping an arm around him or her, making sure that they're all right, making sure that everybody around them was taking heed of what the situation was and was aware, in a protective way. But I suppose at a football club, there are loads of bosses, aren't there? Eddie has his own boss. We've got a director of football, or a sporting director. We've got a chairman. We've got owners, all of whom were frequently on social media, and yet I haven't heard an inkling from them. I haven't heard anything from Mairdad and Amanda or Jamie. I'm hoping that they are in their form of pastoral care have also been in touch with the lad, and regardless of the fact that he cost the club £50 million, and that this has come up when he's only been here a few weeks, and it's obviously something that's been going on for a number of years. I would hope that he's getting the reassurance from those quarters as well. It's not just Eddie Howe, and that brings me to one or two of the questions that were asked of Eddie. I thought some of the press were a bit disingenuous asking him those questions, because quite frankly, he's not in the position to give them an answer. It's not his position. It's not his role to be giving the club's position on something. And there was one question that asked, well, what was the situation with Milan before you bought him? But I don't think Eddie went out with the checkbook and did the deal with him. It's not like we'll meet you at Scotch Corner. It's not the old days, is it? I mean, we know that for a fact because Eddie said, yes, I've watched the lad play, I've seen the videos, we've discussed them, but the first time he met him was when he arrived in the UK. Somebody must have met him. Somebody must have been in discussion with him and his agent long before he was signed. Someone is responsible for the due diligence that they're supposed to do. The analysis that's taken on players when they sign. So there are people who are responsible for that, and that's who it should be directed at. And I suppose with no other sort of area to point at, my point is it's Dan Ashworth. Dan Ashworth is who you should direct those questions to. Stick to the football side, stick to the game, stick to what's happening on Wednesday and what's happening tomorrow if you want to know a little bit about the players. But when it comes to something like that, get the questions upstairs. Start asking the questions upstairs. Don't bog Eddie Howe down with this sort of thing, And these guys know it. There's no question that the press know who they should be asking the questions of, but they're not. I just hope that we can get around this. And I'm more concerned for the lad than I am for the club, to be perfectly honest. But that's just me, We've got a good squad. We've got some great footballers within that squad. I'm hoping they're all banding together. But we don't know what's going to happen to Sandro. We don't know whether he's going to get a long-term ban, a short-term ban. We don't know whether he'll be banished from the changing room and that type of thing, or whether he'll still be allowed to be part of it. I personally think, and I thought exactly the same with Ivan Toney, that banishing somebody from work for something that's happened outside work, I think is harsh in the extreme. I don't know what the benefit that the football authorities are trying to gain from that. And I think far better to have that arm around him and to be part of the squad than it is to be banished to the four winds for months and months. I just don't understand that. And that's not that's not because he's a Newcastle player. As I say, I felt that for Ivan Toney as well. I just thought it was a ridiculous way for the football authorities to go on. You have something that happens outside of your work. Why should you be banned from attending work? You know, because that's what it is. It's just odd. But Eddie played well. He played a straight bat. He flitted some off like you would expect him to. And as George says, he's media savvy now. He's been well versed and well trained, and maybe it's just his personality, but he gives nothing away, does he?
No, definitely not. And I genuinely think that, you know, from our perspective, this will benefit us in the long term. I think Tonali will come back a better player, and I do think, and I've said this all week on the Northeast Breakfast show on Toon Radio. I genuinely feel that Tonali will play some part tomorrow, and you'll get the support of the fans, and then whatever suspension he gets, he'll serve it. He'll come back a much better player for this experience. He'll look a different player. Mitch, what's your thoughts on what was said at the press conference today?
I thought Eddie Howe was a class act. Simple as that. And you need, if you want to know why he's so respected in the dressing room, that one phrase he used about wanting to reach out and throw his arms around everybody and protect them tells you everything that's happening in our dressing room and why everybody loves Eddie Howe so much. It's not just he's not just a manager. He's something more than that. And when you ask where pastoral care is coming from, it's from everybody in that dressing room. Eddie Howe down, the coaches and everybody around him, and some of those personalities he has in the dressing room, and some of the other players he has in the dressing room. And now you're seeing why certain players were given extended contracts, possibly too, because he wants to foster that in the dressing room. And you're right, I agree totally that whatever happens, if Tonali has to serve a ban, we will get a better player back. Talking to my good friend Steve Ramsey today, who's somebody I've mentioned a few times, who can tell you firsthand what addiction can do, gambling addiction. Gambling addiction is an interesting one. It's seen as the white collar addiction, really, in many ways. I've dealt with addicts during one of my roles when I was down on Teesside. Very fascinating and delve into human behaviour. The very fact it's an addiction, it starts by trying to hide it and pretending everything's normal. And that's what people forget here. It's hidden from everybody around. And then before you know it, you're in up to your eyeballs and where you're going to go. And one thing that Steve said to me today was everybody talked about how Tonali arrived looking like he was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. And he said, from his experience, once it was out, once his situation was revealed, the relief was ridiculous. That weight of the world was off his shoulders. And he sees very potentially the same situation with Sandro Tonali. That when he returns to football, if he is banned, we will get twice the player back. And it could work out to be an amazing move for both of us, in that we support a player who needs support, who needs help. We give him everything we've got. When he comes back, he will give that and more back. And we might end up with an even better player than we've signed. Obviously, we still don't know all the facts. We don't know where it's going. We don't know what kind of ban, if he indeed deserves a ban. We just don't know that. And it's that lack of information that creates speculation that's sometimes not helpful. One thing I will say is I know 100%, if he crosses that white line in a black and white shirt tomorrow, you will absolutely know, and he will absolutely know how much he is supported, because I'm damn sure that he'll get the support from the crowd. In response to what was just on the screen there, why don't they seek help? Because they don't feel they can. They're embarrassed. They're ashamed. They're hiding it.
Yeah.
It's an addiction. It's really, really, really very, very difficult. Because once you're in that situation, your normal thought processes go out the window. When you've got £1,000 riding on a spread of 7 corners in a Kazakhstan second division game, to make up your losses from last week, are you thinking normally there? Absolutely not. And that's the problem. And it's not seen, like I say, it's a white collar addiction. It's something that many people would be ashamed of if it was to come up. I'm quite sure he is. And it will be a relief for him, I'm quite sure. And so, it's something that we can all grow and move on from. And good God, this journey that we're on with Newcastle United has thrown some very interesting curveballs in the last 2.5 years. But, these are the things we all grow together with. But also, again, I come back to where we started here. What Eddie Howe showed in that press conference today is exactly why the players love him to bits, and the players will run through brick walls for him.
100%, no doubt about it. Ian says, I've got first-hand knowledge of addiction of many types, which I don't want to discuss, but George will tell everyone treatment, not punishment, is the only way to stop addiction. I am in recovery myself, said Ian. Thanks for sharing that, Ian, and well done.
Yeah, absolutely. Just another one is that people saying about what he knows and what he didn't know. I wish I had £1 for every time when I've been dealing with somebody in court with an addiction, any addiction, who say getting caught was a relief.
Yeah.
Getting caught was a relief, because then they could let it all out, everything, not bits of it, everything.
Good point. Well made from George. It is embarrassing, Jonathan, and Mitch did have it bang on. I don't want to dwell on this. We've talked about it for long enough this week. Let's wait and see what happens with the...
I'm going to talk about tickets next.
With the outcome. Well, actually, lads, I just want to mention this because we did get a message from Andy. He said, just watching the Amigos. This was last week. And I have to say, I disagree with the issues in the East Stand. I'm a season ticket holder in the East Stand, and I've got to say I've never had a single issue or seen any queuing going into the ground, but I do go in for the 50% off deal. So there you go. Thank you for that. I do like to show both sides, lads, and thank you for sharing that. And yeah, if you get in early, you're not going to queue. If you go late, you're going to queue. I guess that's the message I think we've got to get across from that. But look, it is what it is. We've just got to accept it, and I'm sure that we'll have other things to discuss.
One man's late is another man's early, Steve, as well. Don't forget.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Hey, okay. Chris, try living in the Middle East. Jesus.
Exactly. Okay, as always, we do have plenty to get through on the show, and I don't want to have a situation where I'm cramming everything in at the end. So here is the day I met. The day I met, where I asked you to send in photographs of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present. Big thanks to the Heed for this.
Hey.
And there's the Heed with Callum Wilson. I think you would have all preferred to see Callum Wilson on the pitch, but on that particular occasion, he was having a get-together with the Heed and in an executive box by the looks of it. So very nice. Thanks for sending that in. If you want to feature on the show meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present, send it to me or the lads, and we will endeavour to get it on the show. A few comments early doors. John said, afternoon, everyone. A return to form and moving up the league. Key players from injury. Very winnable games coming up. A date with Dortmund in the Champions League. One of the greatest nights in the club's history against PSG. Do you think Tonali Gate will put a spanner in our works, or will Eddie and his team guide us through successfully? We're really thriving at the moment. The press conference today, well, we got a few updates on players. We know for a fact that Anthony Gordon is back because he just had a one-match suspension, which is great. We now know that Joe Linton is back firing on all cylinders and hopefully going to get back to his best. Very typical Eddie Howe answers on the fitness of Alexander Isak and Sven Botman. Sven Botman, he's had a good 2 weeks, was all he said. And as for Isak, he said he hadn't trained with us since the international break, but it's one to watch and to make a late decision on. Lewis Miley is got glandular fever, so he won't be playing and will be edged back in slowly but surely into the first team setup. And talk obviously of Anthony Gordon coming straight back in, which I mentioned, but there's Joe Willock is the other midfielder I was thinking of. Joe Willock, we know from Eddie's recent press conferences, is on the road to recovery. This game, you would imagine, is too soon for him, but he is certainly, getting back in contention, which is great to hear. So, George, whatever happens to Tonali, he's available tomorrow. I do think he'll play some part. But on top of that, George, we've got a lot of midfielders and we've got plenty of options still. And although Eddie says losing somebody always creates that backup kind of issue, will you have strength and depth? It affects the depth of the squad. It's an area where we've got a lot of players who could come back in at some point, George. So I'm not too concerned. Are you?
No, not at all. There's talent in abundance there at all areas of midfield, and I've got no worries that Eddie and his team will get them all prepared for whatever we face, whether it's Crystal Palace or whether it's Dortmund. And situations like that always present an opportunity. And, it could be one of the games where young Anderson just takes the game by the scruff of the neck and shows what a great player he's going to be, things like that. Big Joe Linton's going to come on and shake the foundations, I suspect, when he gets back on, because he doesn't like being away. So, yes, there's lots of things they could try, lots of things they can do. And we have the steady Eddie and Longstaff who just churns the games out and produces all sorts of good things. And for me, the most important thing he produces is, of all the midfielders, he's not afraid to take a suicide pass. He'll take the ball at any time from anybody and then look to make a forward movement. I used to get tired in days gone by when England particularly used to have midfield players who would go sideways and backwards and go forward once in the blue moon. Sean Longstaff's first move almost invariably is to look to see how he can go forward. So no, I'm like you, Steve. I'm not worried about what's happening at the moment. And I do hope that at some stage, if not at the kickoff, that Tonali will get on the pitch tomorrow. But even if he doesn't, there's plenty of people there queuing up to have a go and desperate to get a place. And I'd like you, Steve. I just don't fear. I think we've got the staff, and we've got the players to fill in as well. And I'm going to have to take a rain check, boys, because that sounded like my doorbell.
Go on, we'll bring you back in when you've answered that, George. Well, Mitch, you're up next, because that's the way that the computer has worked it tonight. But I mean, look, we've got plenty strength and depth at the moment, and I think the midfield, which Cynical Jim talks about, he says, I'm not concerned about losing Tonali for a few months. He says, remember the midfield that got us to fourth last season are still at the club, and I mean that midfield that we've had in the last few games has got us to a wonderful run of games, and I mean we were all a bit concerned about, the injuries, etc., and suspensions. But I mean, Bruno, Longstaff, Gordon, Miguel Miron, that was the foundations of success last season. This season, it's pulled us through that difficult period again, and they're all fit and raring to go tomorrow.
there's always two ways we can look at situations. And my dad used the word opportunity. You can look at it as a threat, or you can look at it as an opportunity. Because of the Stockholm syndrome of the last 14 years, we're constantly looking at the threats. We're waiting for the wheels to come off. Where's it going to go wrong today? How are we going to do the most Newcastle United thing and fuck this one up this time? That's natural. So we would be programmed to think. For me, I say, okay, if Tonali's out, let's treat it as if he's got a knee injury. I mean, he's out for 6-7 months. So what we're going to do then? Well, what we're going to do is take the midfielders that we have, and we've got midfielders close to coming back to full fitness, and we've got people that we've not seen Willock kick a ball. I can't even say kick the ball in anger. We've just not seen him kick a ball. And so we've got people coming back to fitness. We've got people who can slot in. We've got people who can take an opportunity. We want to see more of Anderson. We want to see more of Anderson in one of his more natural roles than necessarily stuck out wide on the wing. Well, okay, there's an opportunity for a young man that we want to see blossom. And we want to give him some game time. And that game time, like I say, could have come around from an injury to a player, let alone a suspension for, who had player being banned for betting scandal on the bingo cards this year. Probably not many of them. And so, but players missing out through long-term injuries is a far more likely outcome. Look at Neymar. He's done his ACL and part of his PCL. He's done for a while. And that could happen to any player tomorrow. And we've got to deal with it. And so we deal with it by taking the midfield that we've got and asking some of them to contribute a few more minutes in their legs than what we were expecting to through the season. And from what I've seen of the midfield, I quite think we'll be okay. And we might see someone like Anderson grasp his opportunity. And when Barnes is back fully fit, we might see him grasp an opportunity. This is why Eddie brings these young, malleable and shapeable players in, because one of those will turn out to save with 50, 60 million on somebody, because they'll take their opportunity and turn out to be class themselves. And so that's the way I think we've got to do, is just try and keep that positive mindset. Well, where we are in the league on form, our form is actually far better than we realise. I don't know if people have seen the chart with, I'm not big into XG and some of the modern stats that they use, but there was a chart looking at XG versus expected XG, and we're just a gnat's chuff away from where we should be. And that's all on Eddie and what the squad are doing. And so I think really for me, we'll look at the opportunities that we can give to other players and say to those players, right, chuck a marker down. When he's back from his ban or whatever, tell me why I should drop you. Because you've been making a name for yourself, yeah? And so that's the way we've got to look at it. And we're better together as a group. In the dressing room, on the terraces, we've shown that. The PSG result. And you listen to how that's being reported around the world. They're still talking about it now.
Yeah.
They're still talking about it now in the Middle East. Thierry Henry did a podcast with Shearer and Lineker and Micah Richards. Go and watch that. Look at Thierry Henry's reaction to it. They're still talking about it now. And so that's what we've got. And I'm quite sure we'll cope. And we've got the opportunity to add to the squad in January, and you just never know who we'll bring in.
Steve, we've got strength and depth. It's what we wanted. Interesting comment there before. Somebody saying it's Andy Ford. He says with the Barnes and Tonali situation, it's like our transfer window didn't even exist. A right, left back that have played once each, other player on loan and ASM sold. Are we actually weaker now? I don't think we are. It's just the way that it goes with football, Steve. You know what I mean? During a season, you do get these kind of problems, and the fact that our midfield, we still look at tomorrow's game against Crystal Palace going, we've got a full strength midfield, I would say. is testament to the fact that we've got strength and depth.
Yeah, and you also remember that when it comes to bringing in quality players, often that quality rubs off on other members of your squad, and you suddenly get players that raise their game because they want to show that they're just as good, if not better. They want to show that the manager that or the coach that when the opportunity arises, they'll not let the team down. We do have a good team spirit. That's a massive positive for us as well. You look at Murphy last season. When he came on, he never let the club down, never let the manager down. In fact, I think of all the players, Murphy was the one that Eddie Howe trusted the most when he made a change. He could slot him into a certain position to do a certain job at a certain time in a game. And I think it's going to be very similar this season. Anthony Gordon has grasped that left spot, and he's done remarkably well. And he's kept Barnes out of the team. Let's face it. I mean, Barnes. Everyone expected Barnes to be the first choice left-sided midfielder, stroke striker, or certainly of the front three. But it's Anthony Gordon that has taken the jersey. And that's what happens in football. It then becomes Barnes' job when he does get the opportunity to get that journey back, or to turn around to the manager and say, you can't leave me out because of the performances putting in. And then the manager has to look at other players within the squad who are perhaps not performing as well as he is. It just so happens that Barnes is out at the moment with what looks like an injury that will keep him away until probably December, January, which is unfortunate for him. But it's fortunate for Anthony Gordon, and it's fortunate for other players. It's fortunate for Anderson. We could turn around and say that it's unlucky that young Lewis Miley's picked up a typical teenager's illness in glandular fever. Now that is an energy sapping virus that you have that could really affect the lad for a good few months. And then you've got Elliot Anderson, who worked his socks off all the way through the summer and is now shown what work really brings, in terms of upper body strength, lower body strength, and then being able to slot into a team when asked. So I think I think one of the things is when you get an injury or you get a player out, we tend to look at the negatives. We also have this thing as football fans that we have our first 11 and nobody else. If you're not in the first 11, then you're crap, And if somebody's out, the person who's coming in is nowhere near as good as him because he didn't cost 50 million quid. He came from Bangor or wherever, and he cost 10 and 6. I suppose that's the nature of football. I thought it was really interesting. You said that you mentioned Sven Botman, and I'm sure we'll get to later on talking about the team. But Botman's been out, but Eddie said that he's had a good 2 weeks. Well, I think that what we can read from that is he's had a better 2 weeks than Sandro Tonali has.
Good point. Yeah, I mean, it was brilliant. He's had a good 2 weeks. I mean, we've seen his social media. We're not stupid. I think we all think, Botman will probably play tomorrow. The Isaac thing interests me as well. But look, Eddie doesn't give much away. No. He's got one eye on. Although he says he concentrates game by game, he's going to have one eye on Wednesday with his team decisions tomorrow, and he's going to, essentially he's going to look at that and make his decisions accordingly. But we've still got plenty of strength and depth. I also saw the comment from BJR saying, would our views change on Tonali if it was found out he'd been betting on Newcastle games? I don't want to go down that particular wormhole, BJ, only because because we've covered. I don't want to do it, George. I don't want to discuss it because it's speculation and it doesn't do anybody any good speculating on something like that, which we don't know. We don't think's happened. We don't know what's happened. When the truth comes out, when we find out exactly what the situation is, we might comment on it, but at the moment, I don't think it does anybody any good talking about that at all. Okay, Alan Thompson. Let's move slightly. He says, which game is more important? Now, this is a question Alan asked before PSG when he was talking about PSG and West Ham. So he's just reinventing the wheel and changing the teams. Alan Thompson says, which game is more important, Dortmund or Palace? Me personally, it's Palace. Alan, I'm going to give you the same interview as I gave you the last time. The same answer. Sorry, I genuinely feel, obviously, that we have to compete week after week after week and get consistency in the Premier League. Newcastle United want to be in the Champions League every season. So my answer to you last time was very simple. I felt that the league game was more important. However, I do agree when somebody else says they're both as important as each other. But if you're asking me to pick a game, I genuinely feel that the most important game is the league game, because if we finish in the Champions League again this season, that's fantastic. We'll be back in the Champions League again next year. It's great financially. It's great for attracting players, etc. But equally, both games for me are just as important as each other. And as we showed last month, before the, in the last set of games, Newcastle United are treating every game the same. Every game is important. So the Carabao Cup game against Man United is as important as the game against Dortmund, is as important as the 2 league games or 3 league games we've got. Simple as that. Mitch?
Difficult to disagree with a well-constructed argument like that, mate. At the end of the day, though, if you want to push us in the corner and say which is more important, yeah, Palace. Because in the grand plan of things, the easiest way to qualify for the Champions League again is to do it through league position, not win the Champions League. It's that simple. We have nothing to fear from both teams. However, and I think Eddie made this point in the press conference again today, to take Palace lightly would be a disservice to Palace. It would be insulting to Palace. And it would let ourselves down. 3 points in the league is at home is always one of the most important things you want to do. And then the Champions League, well, we could suffer a draw at home because we've got to go there. We've still got to go to Paris, and we saw what we did to them. We've got Milan to come at home, and we've got to draw there. Would I say it's a more important game? I don't think so. I think Palace is the more important game if I was pushed into a corner. But like you say quite rightly, every game is as important as each other. We would love to go an entire season unbeaten, I'm quite sure. That'll never happen. But might in the future, but certainly not right now. And by placing more importance on a game, you're then doing a disservice to your opposition in any other game. And that's usually then when you step on a banana skin or a banana blip, as Sir Bobby would have said. And so that's that's when you get yourself into trouble, when you start to say, well, that game's more important than this. I know it's an old cliche about taking it a game at a time, but that's absolutely the way we've got to do it. Okay, George.
Well, I was just about to say what Neil said. Your next game's your important game. It's as simple as that. And you get that out of the way, then you think about the next one. Because if you don't, you end up with a mindset that says, well, okay, we've got that one, we've got that one. And the wheels come off, so something happens, you're not ready for the next game. So the next game's the important one. Whether it was Palace or Dortmund, it wouldn't matter to me. That's the important one. And then you get ready for the next one after you've got that one out of the way. Otherwise, you're going to be chasing your tail forever. You never have an important game. And it's just as simple as that for me. And Palace aren't going to be a pushover. It's amazing what Hodgson gets out of those players when he keeps coming back. But Neil's right. It would do them a disservice to pretend that they're less important than Dortmund, and vice versa. God, that's a nice place. That's a lot of great. Yeah. Anyway, Palace is just as important as any other team. And on Saturday, tomorrow, it's the most important game because it's the next game and because what it means to our league players as well. What a fillip it would be if we could turn them over and get a good score against them. It would be absolutely great. So fantastic. Hi, Emily. Lovely to hear from you. It's absolutely great. But next game's the important one. Sorry, Alan, but that might not be what you wanted, but it's what you're going to get.
Steve, you're on mute. You're on mute, Steve. Maybe the cat was meowing.
Well, sorry. Yeah, you can't go into a game with one eye on the following game because the chances are you'll slip up in both. And I think it's difficult for a coach if he does go in with that mindset and, like, for example, makes wholesale changes. We know that it happens in League Cup games and that type of thing. And often you come unstuck. But the league's your bread and butter. The Champions League is your choice of filling, isn't it, when you're in comparison? And I think that if you do go in, then you can have an air of complacency. You can also, if you go into a game and if Eddie walked into changing rooms tomorrow morning or tomorrow lunchtime and said, right, lads, I'm going to drop 6 or 7 of you. I'm going to play basically, 7 other members of the squad ahead of you because I want to rest you for the game on Wednesday night. Then I think a lot of those players would be disappointed because they would see that as sort of, some players might turn around going, yeah, fair enough, I'm getting a day off. But I think the vast majority of players want to play every game. And they want to be out there, and they want to, you've got like Callum Wilson, for example. You just listen to him and he's screaming on his podcast that he thinks he's fit and he thinks he should play. He's not having a go at the manager. It's because he wants to score goals, because that's what he does. And he wants to get one over on his mate on his podcast who's not scoring goals and this type of thing, That's the appetite that these guys have because they're fully professional. And as I say, I think if you did go into the game with one eye on the following game, there's every chance you could come unstuck on both of them. And that invariably happens as well. And that would be just our luck. And if anyone is interested in giving the Palace game a miss or not worrying about it and wants to concentrate on Dortmund, then Dortmund are playing tonight and you can watch them on TV at 7:30 if you've got one of those channels that gets you that sort of access. So if you're interested in Dortmund, then give them a look, and then come on the shows on Monday and Tuesday and let us know what you think of Dortmund as well. That would be interesting.
Yeah, well, we did have a great show earlier this week with one of the lads who was a Dortmund fan. I thought it was great to have him essentially give us his views on the forthcoming Champions League games. Absolutely brilliant to have him on. So I am going to jump on his podcast, I think, on Sunday. So I will share the link on here for anybody who is interested. Okay, a lot of people talking about getting Neves on loan from Saudi and sending Tonali the opposite direction. I've got to be honest. I think this is I think this is where the Smith Rowe thing came from, Mitch, as well. I mean, we're a little bit away from the transfer window opening in January. There's always going to be silly things going around. But I just after what we've said, I just can't see Newcastle United doing any business like that unless we get another couple of injuries, Neil.
And links with Calvin Phillips as well. Back up, and again, it's potentially because we might be in the market for a central midfielder. If we were to do a deal like that, I would like to put the loan fee down as either for the crack or to piss Jurgen off, and just leave it at that. It's like it would take It's certainly something that could be done. I've got a feeling there's no way anybody could stop it. It's interesting to see on the back of the deal with Saudi this week, certain Manchester journalists throwing their toys out the cot and copying the Premier League and the FA in tweets. And it's like, well, lads, it's been announced. That means they've already approved it. So what are you achieving with this other than looking like a great big baby? So, it certainly could be done, but is it needed? Does it create the kind of attention that's wanted? And I know also from a tax point of view, for someone like Neves coming out of the UK, technically to sort the whole tax issues out, he's got to be away for 2 years minimum. That's why when everybody comes to Dubai, they always say, I'm coming for 2 years, and then we'll see. But I just can't see that happening, and I don't see necessarily a need for it either. with the squad we've got and with the players that we could, drop in. Calvin Phillips is a different one, though. I think it's quite clear he needs rescuing for his own benefit.
100%.
Could I see him fitting into our system? Absolutely. He was over. Well, obviously, as you know, we're sometimes getting the good fellas where to buy Whites, the Leeds lads get into. And while they were both injured, both him and Cooper came and watched the game with them in Goodfellas of all bloody places. And I don't think he was appreciative of the Geordie in his ear every 5 minutes saying, well, when are you going to sign for us? When are you going to sign for us? Because that was recently relatively fresh post-takeover. But he also didn't seem abhorrent to the idea, shall we say. Really nice lad, actually, to be fair. He came across very, very well. But I think that's speculation for January. I don't think we need to be thinking about it now because we can't do anything about it anyway. We've probably already got January window planned out, but if Tonali gets a huge ban, for example, that might change our thinking in the January window. And so, and again, we'll remain constantly flexible. If you talk to everybody involved with the club in terms of the transfers and the transfer side of things, they always want to be able to react and respond or predict where the market's going to go. And therefore, a big ban for Tonali, say a 2-year ban, that would almost certainly, for me, I think, change the thinking in January. Personally, don't think that's going to happen if the main man has 7 months because he's cooperated nicely and played ball and ratted everybody out, but that's another matter. At the end of the day, and I don't know how it would sit with Tonali going the other way, because I don't know if a ban from the Italian authorities would just be UEFA wide or if it would be worldwide.
Well, on FIFA asking for it to be worldwide.
Probably. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, it probably will be. It probably will be.
Yeah, I would imagine it would be. But at the end of the day, I think the only thing that might change all of that would be a huge ban for Tonali.
Yeah. Okay. The news has come through as well. The Evening Chronicle running the story. It's not quite hit the app yet. But yeah, Almiron has been banned for 6 months from driving for failure to give information on a particular driving incident that took place at Gateshead Magistrates today. The charge of driving whilst on a mobile phone was chucked out. So 6 months and 660 quid fine for Miggy Almiron is the next news that's just come out of St James's. Yeah, just quickly, George and Steve. George, you first. I don't see Newcastle bringing in any midfielders in January unless there's more injuries or more problems. I genuinely think Newcastle will look in other areas in January.
I think it would have to be a horrendous scenario that would make them go into buying midfielders in January. They're more likely to give what we've got a try. I mean, young Lewis Bailey will be back by then. I would have thought, his glandular fever will be over. Anderson will get a start, and others will be knocking on the door and give them a go. That's what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be necessarily paying the sort of money, for example, that one for Calvin Phillips. You're not going to get him cheap. So, no, I wouldn't be buying lots of midfielders. There's all sorts of things. I'm having a laugh at Miggy's mobile phone while he was driving. He probably claimed he didn't understand what the coppers were saying, I suspect, but never mind, I could be wrong. Oh, I love it. I thought for him it would be bound to be speeding, but never mind.
Yeah, he's failed to give information relating to the identification of the driver or rider of a vehicle when required on April 24 this year. The charge relates to the identification of the driver of a Land Rover who was alleged to have been guilty of an offence. So it's as simple as that, really.
No speaking the language, officer.
Possibly. Steve, just on the midfielders. I mean, Smith Rowe was linked at the start of the week. Maybe that was because the press had got wind of this story that was going to break. We're people talking about Neves being swapped and Tonali going the other way, all of this stuff. But I just don't think it's an area Newcastle will strengthen unless there's a major problem with other players.
FFP, let's just say that might be what holds us back. That's the big one. The other one is, does Eddie Howe want anyone? If they can get someone in and Eddie wants them, then they'll bring somebody in. But at the end of the day, that decision will be down to Eddie if he feels that the squad needs strengthening. The squad needs an uplift. The squad needs a change of direction. If it was anyone, personally, I would say that it would be a striker that he would be looking at. I think we're now realising that if you go into 4 competitions and you've only got 2 main strikers, then you can come unstuck. And we've got 2 of them both potentially injured at the moment. One, I think, will be held back for Wednesday. The other one, I'm hoping, is fit for tomorrow. But no, I think that's where, if we're going to go out in the transfer window, I think it'll be a striker rather than midfielder, unless Eddie has spotted a hole that he wants to fill.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, I agree with Steve. I mean, what we've got to remember with the strikers is we've already got our what we'd call our top striker, who's on the wrong side of 30 and starting to have injury problems. So you want to cover him anyway, I would have thought. So yes, that's where I would go.
Yeah, and as for Miggy, I think what's happened is he's forgot to send the paperwork back. If you don't tick the box and tell them who it is, and he hasn't sent the paperwork back, he's just ended up with an automatic 6 months. That's what's happened there. He hasn't disclosed who was driving the car because he hasn't sent the paperwork back.
Yeah,
possibly. Yeah, but he's got a fine. He's got a fine. He's suspended from driving for 6 months. We'll move on. Okay. Before I play the ads again, just to give everybody a little bit of a break and a breather, it is time to hand over and announce the winner of the Toon Teasers Trophy.
Oh, God.
Oh, God, says George. Oh, God, indeed, George. So what I'm going to do is tell you, going from the bottom to the top, who won the quiz. So, and there's no, let's put it this way, guys. There is no losers in this because everyone give it a go. It was the first time they're giving it a go. When you're put under pressure, I've got to be honest, especially with these questions that you've ended up with from me. I thought you all did really, really well. Okay, so how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in joint 5th place on 6.5 points each was Kevin and Mitch. Well done, lads. Joint 5th. Okay, so in 4th place on 7.5 points with Steve Wilkinson. Well done, Steve.
Brilliant.
In 3rd place with 10 points, George Mitchell.
Hey, thank you.
Well done, George.
Thank you.
George, you're on the podium. You're on the podium.
Hey.
So that leaves us with Stu and Steve.
Well done, Stu.
So in 2nd place with 11.5 points, Steve Hasty.
Yay.
So the winner of the inaugural quiz and the winner of the trophy, sponsored by John Justice Allen, is Stu Penman with 12 points. Well done,
Stu.
Do you know what it is? I'm never going to hear the end of this on the bloody plane to Dortmund.
Give us a speech then.
I would just like to thank my mum and dad for making me. Be honest.
I tell you what, Stu, you had an absolutely brilliant last round, didn't you?
I would have loved your questions as well, Steve. I would have got more. Seriously, it's really difficult when, especially how random the questions were. Even the Newcastle questions, they were just from one decade to another, and then it was like based like specific on crowds. So the general knowledge one was the one that seemed to favour one, wasn't it?
Yeah.
The photos, I think, is just pot luck. And even then, when I finished it, I was really frustrated because there was 2 or 3 I knew I should have gotten that I didn't.
Yeah.
Everyone was like that as well. But it was really, really tense. So the Heat's coming over for his 50th after we get back from Dortmund, after me and Mitch get back from Dortmund. So I'll get me put their trophy in his suitcase. Just put it under his hat.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant stuff. Well, what we want is we need to see photographs of you getting that trophy filled with spirits, Stu, and drinking it in.
Everything. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, we need some video footage of you doing it, mate, and drinking it. So that's the one.
Right, Lucas, I'm going to enjoy the rest of the show.
Take care, mate. Well done. All right, losers. Dear me. Okay, folks, we are going to have the ads again just so the lads can have a quick breather, and then we'll be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors. Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website skipsandbins.com. Easy contract free and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find out more about them from their website, mrvickies.co.uk, or by calling 01768 210 102. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the video side of things. And thanks to United Group Travel, UK coach holiday firm based in Morpeth. There's no strangers on their tours, just people you haven't met yet. They're now taking bookings for 2024. You can call 01670 632 460, 0791 666 4174, or 07957 141 654, or go to the website unitedgrouptravel.com. Please subscribe to the channel. Hit the subscribe button underneath the video today. We still do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video to like it. It does us a big favour. Click share to share to your other social media and let people know about NUFC matters. We're also a podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the show financially, you can take out a £25 one-off membership. You get a scarf, a pen, a cup, and a membership card. How do you get it? Go to nufcmatters.com, look for membership. If you've got a smartphone, then put your smartphone over the QR code and it will take you straight to that section on the website. We also support the food bank on this channel. You can donate to the food bank today by going to nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. We do support events on this channel as well. If you've got an event, please send it in and we'll promote it. The Tyne Theatre and Opera House are doing a Keegan, Beardsley and Waddle event, the Class of 84, 25th of January 2024. Book now by calling 0844 249 1000. And the Tyneside Irish Centre, they're doing an event with Frank Clark and John Gibson on Thursday, December the 7th. You can get tickets from nufcmatters.com and they are priced at £15. There's also some tickets available on Groupon. Don't forget, you can catch me 5 days a week, Monday to Friday, with Rye, Dave, and Daz on the Northeast Footy Brekkie Show, 7 till 9. And you can catch us on the Red, the Toon, and the Cat, and on Toon Radio's website. WhatsApp us on the day 0330 043 2002, the perfect way to start your day. I'm just laughing. Beverly from United Group Travel says we love double ads. This is over the moon. And Blue with the Boy says, was a classic when the Dortmund fan you had on was disappointed you weren't doing an ad break. I couldn't get a word in edgeways with him. He was great. What a guest. So many ads, it's like watching American TV. He says, yeah, no. Yeah, sorry, guys. And obviously YouTube chucking their adverts in as well. But at least you know we're still alive and kicking when the ads are on. I've got to be honest. I did think there was I thought there was a little issue this week. I thought Mitch Mitch had decided to take a job and not told us until I read properly that it was Dr. Ian Mitchell and not Dr. Neil Mitchell, who had left the Football Association of Wales to join Newcastle United as the Premier League club's new head of psychology. Now, this was interesting, this announcement. I've been talking about it on the North East Footy Breakfast show as well. But he does a lot of good work. He's done a lot of good work for the FA of Wales. He's done a hell of a lot of work for football clubs and people within football clubs, including stuff. It's to be said with inflatable unicorns, I think was what was quoted, Mitch. When Newcastle United and inflatables are mentioned, you suddenly go back to that day when Newcastle players were in an inflatable outside trying to rest their weary bones. But yeah, what's his appointment say about Newcastle and where we're going, Mitch?
Well, again, it's about treating a player as a person. This is very much the trend in modern medicine, that Western medicine over many years has compartmentalized the body, and it's taught in a compartmentalized way. Actually, what you're treating is a person, and the true meaning of holistic. Everybody thinks holistic medicine is sort of alternative and new age and what have you, but it's not. It's about treating the whole individual. I do that from, tell you, for example, my interest in sports dentistry. One of the metrics for an elite group athlete now for performance is oral health. You can make an elite group athlete perform better by improving their oral health, and that's statistically fact. You treat the whole individual. Psychology and that side of things is something that's been long almost smirked at in certain parts of football. When you've had managers and clubs trying to do different things with players. Wasn't there a club who took their players ballet dancing or something like that? On stage. And just doing different things like that. And they got a little bit of stick for it. But what they're doing is they're taking players out their comfort zones and they're looking at think differently and behave differently. And certainly introducing something like this has been long overdue. Ian Mitchell's record with FA of Wales, I think with the English FA as well, and with Swansea is very, very, very well founded. We have these constant questions about how do we look after these young and even the not so young professionals. How does Sandro Tonali get into the situation that he's had? If he'd had somebody like Ian Mitchell to go and talk to for all of his career, would have things turned out different? I would probably like to think so. It's not just pastoral care, it's total care. It's care of an individual. It's holistic care of the entire person. And the amount of times you talk to players who've had problems, who've got a history of problems, and they talk about their mind not being in the right place. And that's exactly what you need somebody like him around to help. You thrust young people into a scenario where money's not a problem, but the old saying about more money, more problems is very, very true, in my opinion. We expect them to behave like professionals and hold them to a professional footballer. Well, I'm telling you now, professional footballers are not held to the same professional standards as, for example, I would be in the UK. And so, yet we expect them to be role models and everything else, and some of them don't know how to operate a washing machine. The tale of the Sunderland player left in a clubhouse in Crook, which was the last place he should have been put. And when the club went to see how he was doing, there was a spare room full of dirty clothes. Because he didn't know how to work the washing machine, he didn't know how to look after himself. And so when his clothes got dirty, he just went out and bought new ones because he had enough money to do that. And there was literally a room full of laundry to do. All these things happen in football and people miss out on it. Does it help players settle? Probably not. Does it help players go on to be the best they can be and deliver the best they can for the club? I don't think so. And so to be putting what John's saying there as well about percentages, I would say, John, the difference in some levels is less than 1%. I will stand on this. This is a hill I'll die on. The difference between Lionel Messi and John Joe Shelby is less than half of 1%. Because if you think how many people make it through academies to become professional footballers and the odds on that, and then turn that into somebody world class, the odds on that, you are talking about differences of less than half of 1%. And if somebody can unlock that by being the arm around the shoulder, being the ear that they need, this is where we need to be looking. And elite teams look after their players in every way possible. We give young men barrelfuls of money and expect them not to come off the reels. Well, fuck me, some of them do. There's a thing, you know, and I think absolutely everything that we can do to help our players, help our squad, help them grow, develop, and become the very best they can be, whether that's physically, mentally, medically, whichever way possible. And I think this is a fantastic appointment.
Good appointment, George.
Oh,
Different things needed, isn't there, in football?
Yeah, it's and what I like about it is that in terms of doing that due diligence, it's quite clear how well owners do, because they go for the best, don't they? They don't go for second best, and this guy's reputation second to none, as far as I can understand, and everything that's written about him is top class. So well done on the owners for seeking out the right man. In terms of what it's with, well, I've seen the wrong end of it when I was a young man playing football at Newcastle United. Had a lovely lad who played on the left wing, super player, but every now and then he would have a rage. You couldn't go near him because he was raging, and nobody knew how to handle him. The nearest he got to being handled was his mates getting round him and you know, encouraged him, but none of the staff knew how to handle him, and he had a rage, and eventually he ended up with our neighbours down the road. And I've got to be careful; I'm not going to mention the name because the people will be alive who will still remember it. And he's had these rages, and one day he had a rage and killed himself. And it just needed somebody like this Ian Mitchell to get a hold of him and say, This is what we're going to do with you, Bonnie lad. You know, let's talk about this. Why you like this, etc., etc. As I say, my understanding was the only people that got anywhere near him were the lads in the dressing room like me who'd known him since he was a kid, and were able to say to him, "How way, man? You know, shake yourself." But eventually, he had one rage too many, and that was the end of him. So, yeah, this couldn't be a better appointment. And while we're on the subject, it may well be he could have a talk with our friend Tonali as well. You know, it goes across the range. That's the important thing. This isn't just for the odd one. It's the whole club could benefit from what this man's going to do, and that's really important. And it doesn't just have to be players. You know, there'll be others in the club who are suffering, who might just need that warm hand, that warm word at the right time that'll enhance their lives and take them forward. All got to be good for Newcastle United. All got to be good for our team. All got to be good for us. So I think it's a brilliant appointment.
And just to confirm,
Tom's right there, by the way, about Kevin Cale.
Is he really?
Yeah. You missed, I think, 3 or 4 games through what I think they described as a burn, and it was something to do with hot water on his nuts. Aye.
Yeah.
And it was something to do. He didn't know how to work work the kettle and do something with that he was doing in the kitchen.
It was.
That's a classic, that, like, absolute classic. Just to confirm, George, this isn't some kind of this isn't one of your relatives. This isn't like this person, the Ian Mitchell, isn't like a secret son that you've had stashed away or anything. He's not a relative.
No, I've put my bike away by then, so he's.
What an expression!
No, I suspect that if I look deep enough, he probably is a relative, because the Mitchell line is a very easy one to trace. A very easy one to trace. So yeah,
keep it in mind if you need cup final tickets, George. Keep it in mind. Pull a favour in with Dr. Mitchell.
No, I'll get mine from Buckingham Palace.
Oh, yeah, but you do. It's another appointment, Steve. It's another off-field appointment, which is another good one.
Yeah, and it shows how the club's maturing.
Yeah,
it shows how the club's are showing a serious side to its off the field as well. It's on-field activities. It's a sea change. I think he got a lot of criticism, but if I remember rightly, wasn't Sam Allardyce into all of this?
Yeah,
right in the early days, and sometimes people are ahead of the game. Sometimes people hear of newfangled opportunities that they might think help some coaches, some managers. But this was something that Sam Allardyce was very much into in terms of that 1%. Obviously, bringing it forward, the cycling. Dave Brailsford, who's been linked with Man United, is part of the Ineos buy-in, was very much into that 1% gain, looking at the small margins that there were between a top-class cyclist and a world champion and what it needed for that top-class cyclist to become a world champion. Mitch said less than 1%, and I couldn't disagree with him. But it's great for Newcastle United that we've got the foresight to go out there and see that adding somebody like a sports psychologist to the team can be of benefit. There's lots of areas within that sports psychology that they'll be able to work on as well, off the field and on the field, within the player's family, within the player's circle of friendship, how the team operates, the little groups within a team, and what their expectations are of each other, understanding what the rest of the team expect of you and vice versa, and getting those type of things out in the open and working on them. Again, that's what teamwork's all about. And it doesn't just come from, well, I want you to be standing in a certain place when a certain pass is played by a certain player, or expect you to be on a particular run. It's what's in the mind as much as anything, in terms of it should no longer be a situation whereby you get told to do something, it becomes an automatic reaction. And then you start to move forward again, and you start to look at other aspects of the game. Once you meet one challenge, you move on to the next challenge, the next little percentage gain, and so on and so forth. So it's all going to be, it's got to be all a massively positive thing for the team, for the players, for the coaches to have that that additional person for them to talk to as well, for Eddie Howe to get something from a psychological point of view.
Absolutely.
We forget about the manager, but sometimes the managers can be going through off the field problems as well. You can talk to them about, am I doing the right thing when I knock back Louise Taylor's question for the 14th time? And the psychologist might say, yes, but don't knock her back for the 15th. Or it might be that he goes, once you knocked her back for the first one, you shouldn't have even accepted the other 13. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, these are the sort of, these are all little things, but taking away the flippancy, it can only be good for Eddie. It can only be good for the club. And I'm sure that he'll also work with people behind the scenes as well. It's not just going to be the first team. It's going to be the under 21s. It's going to be some of the youngsters who will need that going forward, because part of their learning capacity to try and make them elite footballers. And the academy is an important aspect of our football club now, and it's an area that's been left to its own devices at times, and probably been let down. And if that little bit of psychological warfare and can come into making that squad of players better as well, or those individuals perform more professionally or to a higher standard, and to continue that high quality and high standard, then massive pluses for us, Steve.
Yeah, massive pluses indeed. Good appointment. Very happy with that. And as I say, more, just more professionals, the better at Newcastle in all different areas.
Yeah.
Will help us to grow on and off the pitch. Okay, it is time for Tweet of the Week. If you're easily offended, look away. There are always some offensive. The dark nights are coming in, lads. Things I'm no longer interested in. Driving at night, leaving my house at night, driving in the winter, leaving the house in winter, driving, leaving the house. Sweet. I'm doing sober October, says Pinocchio. And Halloween on the way. Accidentally washed a piece of Halloween confetti down the sink, and I'm afraid to say the plug hole is now very haunted.
Oh dear!
Can you see it?
Yeah.
For the last time, son, Ozzy is not under your bed, says the bat. Halloween costume here. Got my Halloween costume for this year sorted. One for Melly. One for Melly. Disgusted the fireworks have been let off this early. Not Halloween yet, and my poor dog is hiding under the Christmas tree.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. God. Hey, the Laura Council stopped fireworks this year.
Well, have they really?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know that, George, but there we go. You learn something every day on NUFC Matters. Okay. So that one was probably aimed at Stu. This one, redoing the deck. So I went to Party City and purchased a skeleton. Now in 20 years, when the new homeowner needs to redo the deck, you'll see this.
Cruel.
Your standard Everton fan, one eye on Liverpool's results, one eye on where Everton are in the league.
Yeah.
And Tottenham on top of the Premier League table is like an elephant on top of a tree. No one knows how it got there, but everyone knows it will fall.
Very good.
These Facebook ones are great. I'm in Asda. The guy messaged him and said, "Get us a crate of Stella, big man."
That's
Oh, dear.
Be cool, Cody. Don't let her know you like her. And his tail's wagging away there. Jan Auga Fjortoft, his tweet was brilliant this week. The Glazers must be genius. Still in control of Manchester United. Financially, they can still do whatever they want. The sport department, where they're judged, criticised, they give Radcliffe person a responsibility for, and they get paid a fortune. Must be a party at the Glazers.
That's quite true, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
And that's the next player. Where we have your child, says the inbox. What are your demands? Are you out of your mind? The daycare's closing soon. Come and get him now. Lots of talk about who was going to replace Holly Willoughby. Here's the photo to reveal.
Yeah.
And I'm a broccoli and I look like a tree. I'm a walnut, I look like a brain. I'm a mushroom and I hate this game. Time to get the vocal cords going, lads. I'm in the mood for dancing, romancing.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah. Good old dancing and romancing. Fantastic.
That's brilliant.
And don't stop retrieving. Hold on to that feeling.
Oh, dear.
You look so much thinner, says one book to another. Thanks, I had my appendix removed.
Oh dear me.
And one for Twitter of the week from Daddy Al Ramayan. I'll have a beer. It's 9 a.m., sir. Okay, I'll have a beer and scrambled eggs. One for the intellectuals out there. How does Batman shampoo exist, but not Conditioner Gordon?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Good question.
Wow.
Good question. The Pope's handing out miracles to kids in Liverpool. Billy walks on stage and asks him, "Can you help me with my hearing?" The Pope says yes and puts his hands on Billy's ears and prays. He removes his hands and says, "How is your hearing now?" Billy says, "I don't know. It's not until next Wednesday."
Oh.
Offense alert! Do not report this. Do not report this. I asked a Chinese girl for her number, says Ian Edgar. She said sex, free sex tonight. I said wow. Then our Fred said she means 666-3629. Very good. For those fans that mind your language out there. I get me looks from me nan, says Ian. And another one from Ian. Must be cold in that fridge. Beyond sausage. And she said, what do you think? I replied, damn, those are some very good legs. She giggled and said, you really think so? I said, hell yeah, most tables would have collapsed by now. And when you eat too much KFC, know why cows have got hooves instead of feet? Because they're lactose.
Oh, Jimmy.
Lactose. Oh, dear me. Dear Jimmy.
Another one from Jimmy, tweet of the week. He says, I think I missed this episode. Spock and Kirk looking at Playboy. And Google Maps acquires Snapchat. 22 people have been here. 134 people have been here.
Oh, God.
Yes, Paul.
Oh, God.
And what do you see? Dog's arse or E17's Brian Harvey singing Stay Another Day?
Definitely Brian Harvey, that.
Got a few more, lads.
Could be a pencil sharpener.
Well, it could be. We're coming down to the winning ones now, lads. This one, here's a common scam that's going around that you should know about. Steve, this one's for you. Sometimes cattle meow at you like they haven't been fed, but in fact, someone did feed them and they're just trying to get fed again, Steve.
That's probably true in our house, I tell you.
This man spent 13 days looking for his iPad.
Oh.
And Jill Scott's everywhere, says Paddy. Half expecting it to be in my living room chilling on my sofa when I get home, man.
Has been on telly a lot.
Late one, this. Just been watching that Jimmy Savile documentary. Bit difficult to follow as it mixes original stuff with current stuff. It's like now, then, now, then, now, then.
Oh, freaky.
Now then. Oh, dear.
Doctor says I've got to cut out drinking.
Dear.
Very good.
Okay, top three. Modelling, biking, clothes. You had one job. Number two. Stacey Swallows, manager at Siemens.
One for the job.
Thanks for that, Steve. The winner's this one, though. I proposed to Sarah and she said yes. Oh my God, congratulations. Send me a picture of a ring, please.
Ooh.
Oh.
Thank you, as always. Thank you, as always, to everyone who submits the funny, the not so funny, the offensive, the not so offensive. That is Tweet of the Week. Oh my God, he's singing, says Mozza. Thanks, Mozza. Tom wants to know what we think about a new sponsor, Mitch, from Saudi Arabia Airlines. I mean, it was probably the worst kept secret in Newcastle United sponsorship packages, because I think we knew that was coming at some point. We didn't know what, we didn't know where, but it's come, and that's more money, isn't it? That's more money into the coffers for us.
It's more money. It's reported as $3 million a year, which is about the same as Oman Air up here in Chelsea. So it's a good rate. It's a comparable rate. The interesting thing with Saudi Air is it has no connection to PIF. That's Riyadh Air, who are sponsoring the Madrid at the moment. And so from a separation point of view, there's no issue. I think it's quite a smart move. They were a travel partner, and they've now become an airline partner, which is a different beast. I think as the sponsorship goes, I think it's certainly at the right kind of level for where we're at, and will only get better. And I think the one thing people forget about Saudi Arabia is they've been involved in sport for years and years and years. When Williams were winning Formula One titles in the 80s, Fly Saudi was splattered all over their wing and the side of their car. And the other thing about Saudi is they tend to only want to be associated with winners. If you look at their history of sports sponsorship, they sponsor people, teams, and individuals who they believe are winners. And I think that's the interesting thing. And again, it shows the mindset that's going on in the club at the moment, that we are giving out to people who are looking to invest in the club, and that the rest of Saudi now feel comfortable to get behind PAF's project. And I think that's an interesting shift. I think that's an interesting shift for the mindset of Saudi in the region, and the support of Newcastle United as it starts to grow globally. And I think there's opportunities there for the region as a whole. What would make sense from here? Well, it would make sense for Saudi to speak to Newcastle about becoming a European hub for connections for them. And that means jobs. That means income to the region. That means exposure to the wider world. Now Saudi have made it easier to get transit and short-term visas to go and visit places while you're there. It becomes more like a simple operation to use Saudi as a stop-off point to come into Europe. Not just for people from the GCC and the Middle East, but for people from Asia. And so for me, I think it suddenly becomes potentially a game changer, not just for Newcastle United, but for the region. And this is what we've said all along about it, the investment into Newcastle. It's not just about the football club, it's about the city, the region, the community, and everything else. It also puts a little bit of pressure on Emirates, who do a flight a day to Newcastle. Yeah. So at one point, we're talking about doing 2 flights a day to Newcastle and putting a 380 in Newcastle. But an A380 needs a bigger runway, it needs a runway extension. So there's the conversations to start to have. Because I think if Saudi were to start to invest in the airport, that's going to ruffle Emirates' feathers, and Emirates aren't going to want to be outdone by Saudi. And suddenly we've got potential competition for investing in an airport, investing in a region, and bringing money into the region from the border down to the Yorkshire border. Because, again, let's remember, Saudi invest in Teesside and invest across other areas in the northeast. And therefore, we have, I genuinely think we'll see Saudi flights to Newcastle, probably from Jeddah or Riyadh. Riyadh would make more sense for me. And therefore, that then starts to expand things, and it starts to help the airport, starts to help the region, and everybody benefits from it. And our dear friends down the road indirectly benefit from it, and everybody benefits from it, and the smuggies benefit from it. And so while they can all walk around going, seeing some of the things they're saying, at the end of the day, they'll all be twerking for that kind of cat, and they're going to get some of it anyway. And so I think the move that Saudi Arabia have made is a significant one from a point of view of a change of mindset within Saudi about how keen everybody is to get on board with this project.
Great stuff for us, George. More money coming in, financial fair play. And as we said, I think, look, Rome wasn't built in a day. But what I think we all knew when the Saudi investment came in was that this was long-term planning, and that ultimately what will happen, George, is there'll be so many benefits for the area and surrounding areas.
Well, yeah, and just to blow you lads' trumpets, you three have been talking about some sort of air investment from Saudi since the day the takeover came over. So I think it's absolutely great. The other thing I like is the livery of the new aeroplanes is beautiful. black, green, and white. It's absolutely super. It looked really smart. So, yeah, it can only do everybody from the club, and Neil's absolutely right. The region good because it isn't become a European hub. It wouldn't be just about going into Europe. I can see them popping off across the Atlantic from Newcastle. I mean, they try it now, but in a very, very weak sort of way. But it could become a regular one. It could be a regular flight. And then that brings people from other parts of the UK into Newcastle to fly out of Newcastle. That's all got to be enormously encouraging for the region and the area as a whole. And, let's have more of it. It's interesting that I know that, little things that change. For years, the number of students from various parts of the world that come into the university, for example, at long last, we've always had tons of Greeks, but never a direct flight to Athens. Well, suddenly we've got a direct flight to Athens. And then we get a direct flight from Saudi Arabia. Well, more students from Saudi Arabia into the university. Everybody wins with this one. Everybody wins with this one. It's a no-brainer, and its value to the club is more than the $3 million a year in my estimation, because of all the add-ons that come with it. It isn't just $3 million. There's lots of things that go with it. So I'm absolutely delighted at it. It couldn't be better news. As I keep saying on here, I embrace this takeover with all my heart, because again, it's another example of how we've got the opportunity to show the people in Saudi Arabia and the Saudi Arabian government what we've got to offer. It isn't a one-way street. We've got lots to offer. There'll be people out there it would be amazed to go along our coastline. And that's going to have a big impact. So yeah, it couldn't be better. I think it's an absolute winner, and for everybody, and particularly for Newcastle United.
Steve?
Raises the profile of the football club another notch, gets our name out there, helps the region, helps to promote the region. What it also does is it ties in some of the people that Saudi Airlines are already linked with. Companies that they are currently tied in with, that they sponsor, companies that they deal with, companies that they work with. And that will suddenly open up other avenues of sponsorship, possibly for Newcastle United.
Well, it's interesting. They've dived back into F1 with Aston Martin, haven't they, recently?
Yeah. Now we've seen Aston Martin linked on a number of occasions with Newcastle. Now we've got one of Aston Martin's partners being a sponsor of the football club. Who's to say that then won't attract Aston Martin to Newcastle United, or other companies that Aston Martin are linked to, and it just becomes the perpetual wheel then. So it's all good for the region. It's all good for the football club. Massive positivity on a week that's been had a lot of shade thrown on the club. This is something positive that we can discuss. And we can praise the marketing team for going out there and finding an airline partner to link up with, who very, very much is in a growing phase itself as well. So like us, they want to move forward. They want to promote themselves. We're going to help them promote us, and they're going to help our own promotion as well.
Okay, let's start looking ahead to tomorrow's game. The Newcastle United, of course, back in Premier League action after the international break. Good old-fashioned 3:00 kickoff at St James's Park. And the team news, well, Harvey Barnes and Joe Willock remain out. Lewis Miley is ill. Sandro Tonali, we would imagine, will be in the squad. Eddie Howe mentioned Joe Linton, said he would be involved. Sven Botten had a good 2 weeks. Alexander Isak, people saying he may not be involved. It doesn't sound like he's trained, but you never say never. Anthony Gordon's available after a one-match ban. Bruno has to walk carefully. He is one booking away from getting a one-match ban himself. As for Crystal Palace, Eze, Elise, Tompkins, Schlupp, Ferguson and Henderson all miss out. Doucouré, Edouard and Jefferson Lerner all return. There could be a senior debut for forward Matthias Franca. So, as always on the home games, we've got Toon Stato to give us a lowdown.
Hello there, it's been long international break. Did we miss the Premier League? You bet. Newcastle United takes on Crystal Palace at home. Last season we played Crystal Palace 3 times and we drew 0-0 all 3 games. Can this happen for 4th time in a row? Actually, looking at the defensive records of both teams, why not? Newcastle have conceded 17 goals at home since the start of the last season in the Premier League, the meanest home defensive record alongside Man United. On the other hand, Crystal Palace have 4 clean sheets only this season in the league, including the last 3 league games, so both the defenses are on fire. Talking Crystal Palace, they have a relatively short squad and they have used only 16 substitutions in the league so far, and in none of the games they have made more than 3. In Newcastle, we have the local outstanding player Kieran Trippier, who since the beginning of last season has created 89 chances from set plays, which is the highest in the top 5 leagues of Europe, which have also resulted in 8 assists, which still makes him top of Europe from this parameter. The referee of the game is Tim Robinson. He is relatively inexperienced. He has refereed only 7 games in the Premier League, and his debut was in 2019 when Burnley beat Newcastle. Actually, Newcastle have never won a game when this referee has refereed, including 3 games in the Championship back in 2016-2017. Several players have scored their first goals against Crystal Palace. In my mind, I remember Mike Williamson, Rwando Arons, Dario Janmat, of course, Miguel Almiron, and maybe some have forgotten Mikel Merino. Can, for instance, Elliot Anderson become one of these players who opens their scoring account against Crystal Palace? We're 7 games unbeaten in all competitions. Let's hope we extend this on Saturday. Away the lads.
Okay, great stuff as always from Andre, and congratulations to him. He kept that quiet. He got married. I'm on his Facebook page, and there's photographs of him getting married and celebrations and carrying his wife round. So congratulations from everybody.
Yeah, congratulations.
At NUFC Matters, mate. Well done. And yeah, Mitch, this is a big game for Newcastle. It's because it's the next game, and it's Crystal Palace at home. 3 games last season, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, and not the typical 0-0s either. They weren't boring games. They were quite technical and tactical. And
Well,
looking at the stats this season, it looks like it could be much of the same.
and one of them was one of those games where we could quite rightly say we were done by VAR, and that was, just over a year ago with that push. That wasn't, I watched that game at Bees in Germany, and you probably still haven't calmed down now. It's then they're easy to underestimate. That's the point I was making earlier today. Whatever Roy Hodgson does to that squad has the effect he has in that dressing room. Those players will run through brick walls for him the same way ours will run through brick walls for Eddie Howe. And that's what's come. And they always give us a game. They don't roll over. They don't, give it up. Certain teams, if you get them in the right position, have a white flag with them. That's one side that I don't think I've ever seen a white flag come out from in a long time. You've maybe got to go back to when they got humped by Liverpool. Was it 9-0? And that's pre-Premier League days. That's early 90s. That's 91. This Crystal Palace don't have that in them. They've got a bit of backbone. And we're going to have to be patient. And we're going to have to break them down. And it comes back to this, like say it a lot, if we do the right things and play the way we can, the result should look after itself because we should create enough opportunities to make a difference. I think them missing Zaha is, for me, quite important because he's always a player that seems to have upped his game when he came to St James's Park. That said, they've got a number of young players who are in and around the England team who have quality about them. You can't deny that. Now, whether some of them get picked because of the England manager's affiliation to Crystal Palace, I leave that up to other people. But I certainly think if some of our players were in Palace's team, they would be getting picked as well. But they're going to come and they're going to give away a game. But if we play to our capacity, we should see them off, no matter which 11 we put out. It's that simple for me. Put the right effort in, and we should get a reward.
Okay, George. As I said before, this is a big game because it's our next one. Crystal Palace they're gonna be a test, George.
Do you want the dice, Stu? Sorry, Steve.
We'll do it after we've heard everyone's views. We'll go predictions at the end. Go on, just doing it slightly differently. Go on, George.
Right, okay. I'm confident that we'll win 3-0 at least, because we'll be able to pull them out. They'll attempt in Hodgson Way to park the bus and hit one the break. But I think we've got the nous to overcome that. Eddie will have it all prepared for what we do, and I think we'll at least get a 3-0 win. It will be comfortable.
Well, I was doing the predictions secondly, George. I was just wanting your views on the actual team that we're playing.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
It's what's interesting is people are talking about what happened in that game where we didn't get the penalty. What's really interesting is that the only angle that the referee wasn't shown by VAR was the angle where the player actually pushes Willock in the back. Yeah, and that stinks, absolutely stinks. So that's a Palace one to remember. Neil's absolutely right. They're not going to lie down and die. They'll fight as hard as they can until it's that they're not going to win. I think it'll be a good game, but a one that Newcastle will take with some ease, in my view. In certain areas of the field, we've got too much for them. In other areas of the field, they don't stack up against us, even in an attacking sense. Trippier will have that right side sealed off. There's no question about that. I think he'll add to his assists tomorrow. I'm that confident.
Okay, just seeing a clip on BBC at the moment. Football Focus with setting your record button for Bruno and Joe Linton have been interviewed and having a chat about Newcastle United, and looks like it's a very fun, packed interview. So well worth setting your recorders for that tomorrow. Steve, this is a big game. This is a game that Newcastle should be looking at taking maximum points from and learning from last season. I think Eddie will have certainly looked back over those 3 games. He'll remember those 3 0-0s. He'll want maximum points tomorrow because he'll want to keep the continuity. He wants to keep things going.
Yeah, you want maximum points because we're playing at home. Simple as that. That's the first most important fact. You pick up maximum points from your home games if you're going to be out there challenging for a place in the top 4. You can't give away points against a team who are, in my eyes, mid-table team in Crystal Palace, especially a team that's going to be without what I think are their 2-star players in Eze and Elise. Okay, it means Ayew will probably be playing alongside Edouard, the former Celtic striker. Edouard can be hitty-missy. Ayew, he puts himself about. He's a bit of a wasp, but he's one of those players. He can either have an absolutely startling game, or he can hit a barn door from 5 yards. If I was a Palace fan, I would be very frustrated with him. Defensively, they can be quite strong, and I think they've tightened up in the last couple of seasons as well, which is a positive for them, not necessarily for us. But I think we should have too much for them tomorrow, Steve. a lot of it depends on, again, obviously we mentioned it earlier, whether we're going to have Wilson fit, available and fit to start. I suspect he will, because I don't think he will risk a player who in Isak, who hasn't trained all week, who didn't travel on international duty because of a groin strain, or at least was sent back almost immediately. And let's face it, they knew he had a groin strain because he came off with only 4 or 5 minutes to go against West Ham in the previous fixture. I think apart from that, everyone else who travelled overseas for international duty has come back fit, so that's a positive for us. Will he risk Sven Botman, or will Botman be another one that gets held back? Personally, I'm not that too bothered about that, because the form that Lascelles has put in, as he's come in as a more than able replacement and hasn't let Eddie or the supporters or the team down. It's going to be an interesting game. The weather might play a part. The conditions might play a part. It's certainly going to take a stud. We know that, judging by the amount of rain. In fact, it might take flippers as well, Steve. The amount of rain that's come down in the last few days. But no, I think we'll have too much for them.
Okay, time to do the dice.
Remember this week's what 3 words are massive purple helmet.
You're a bugger.
The dice says 3-0.
Dice has gone 3-0. What are you going for, Mitch?
I'd take 1-0 tomorrow, mate.
Yeah, 1-0. I've gone 2-0. I went 2-0 yesterday on the Supermarket and Gibbo show. George, what prediction are you going for? 3?
I'm sticking with me 3-0. Yeah.
3-0, same as the dice. Steve?
I think there'll be goals in this game. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because the fact that it's going to be so wet and so windy. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up with something like a 3-2 tomorrow, to be perfectly honest. It just has that feel about it sometimes when the weather's bad. Either that or it'll be the most boring 0-0 again since the last time they came and the time before that.
Mozza has said that War Flags have just announced that the display is going to be limited tomorrow as everything's soaked. They are prepping for Wednesday too, which is a big pity, but not unsurprising when we see exactly what the weather is doing at the moment. Okay, time to squeeze in Tune Lookalikes. Couple of hasties sent in today. Geordie Jackson says that white one looks familiar. Steve there with his tongue out, according to Geordie Jackson. This one from Chippers, hasty Tune Lookalike.
I feel like that a minute.
Did she play Onslow and keeping up appearances? This one was sent.
Yeah, that's a bit harsh.
Looks like classic. It looks like Eddie Yates as well out of Coronation Street, but that wasn't the winner this week. There was a few better ones than that this week. Rita Oxley, Zinedine Zidane, and David Carradine from Kung Fu was one of their submissions. Another submission from her was this one: Joe Pesky and the actor in The Long Shadow who played Peter Sutcliffe, Mark Stobbart from the Borough, which is that's okay. Not the winner though. We had this one: Joseph Goebbels and Rio Ferdinand. That was from Tom. That was from Tom Dixon, who also sent us Victor Lindelof and Paul Reiser in Dyna. We've had this one before, but if the Borough fans still in the chat, they'll appreciate this. Chesney from Coronation Street and Gordon Strachan, although Gordon's dyed his hair there. Another one from Tom, David Moyes and Sid from Ice Age. Why David Moyes ever thought that was a great photo to allow out there, I really never know. Like, it's absolutely horrendous. Another one, couldn't leave Mr. Hasty out, said Rita.
I knew that was Rita. I
don't know which one. I don't know which one's Hasty there. Big Duncan and Phil Oakey. Yeah, I've never thought of that one. Never thought of that one ever. But that one, it's all right. Yeah. David Seaman and the man of the Pringles. Well, it's all right. It's half decent. Paul Dummett and Mika from 90 Day Fiancé. I've never even heard of 90 Day Fiancé, David Cook. But that's not bad. That's not a bad one. It's not a winner, though. It's not a winner. Coming close to the top 3. Steve Hasty just outside on number 4.
I think I could. I think that is me, actually.
Steve, Steve, that just isn't bad. That was from Fire and Skill. Thank you to him on Instagram. Late submission today. Number 3, Pat Butcher.
Oh, yeah, Sam Smith.
Me.
Sam Smith, yeah. Number 2 from Nick. Very good.
It is.
Sandro, looks very like Sandro Tonali, but it wasn't quite the winner this week, Nick. The winner came from Stu Penman. He's winning everything this week. Lionel Messi and Sheikh Jazim.
Very good.
Very good, very good. Just want to thank everybody in the chat. We had over 530 watching at one point tonight.
Wow.
Big thank you to everybody who is in the chat. We never take it for granted. We love entertaining you guys day in, day out. But Friday night is our special show, as you all know. But thanks to everybody who moderates in the chat as well. Big thank you to all our sponsors who are delighted because they've had 2 sets of adverts. I am back in the morning at 10 o'clock. George and I are into the 90s with those were the days. So that will be on tomorrow. And then I need to confirm with Mitch and Stu, but I would presume 6 o'clock on Sunday night, Mitch, should be okay for a professional.
Yeah, it should be all right.
6 o'clock on Sunday, then I'll get in touch with Stu and hopefully sort that out for Sunday night. But enjoy the match tomorrow, everybody.
Steve, can I have one last?
Well, you always do, George. You always do.
Well, I've just had one or two curious texts. The doorbell was me bloody window cleaner.
Right, okay.
Poor lad was dripping rain off his nose.
Not surprised.
And to be honest, the people in the chat seem to think that Rio Ferdinand and Goebbels is the best one in the Lookalikes.
Yes.
Right.
No surprise, that's gone down well. It didn't win, though. It didn't win. I'd be accused of being a Nazi if that was the winner. So well done to everybody who submitted everything as well. I never thank everybody, but the tweets of the weeks and the Lookalikes, they've become part and parcel of Friday night show. So thank you to everybody who submitted them. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the football, and please, whatever you're doing, stay safe in this horrendous weather if you're in the UK.
Yeah.
Take care. We will see you live Sunday, 6 o'clock. Take care, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Bye, everybody.